Just mentioned community theater hack. If one of our listeners is interested in pursuing becoming a playwright for the community theater, do you think that this is a good opportunity for people who are looking to get into getting their writing published, getting their work produced?
Well, I think it's. I have found, as corny as community theater is, and I don't know if anybody's seen, Waiting for Gutman, which is the send up of community theater. It's a Christopher Guest movie, and it's very funny. And I had I had kids in high school, and they turned down their nose at the theater types in high school. As did I. I did a little speech and debate in high school, but after I finished my first novel, I sort of found the process. It's very exhausting. It took me 4 years. You send it off. I came close to getting a publisher, but I didn't. 9/11, 2001 hit. The publishing industry changed its focus. Nobody was publishing anything, so I published it myself, print on demand. And I found it just a sort of exhausting experience. And I met a woman at the place where I was working, and she started talking about she acts in community theater, and she was sort of an aging Hollywood Boulevard type. I mean, she probably late 60s, had a very grand manner to her, and she said, well, why don't you join Stage Source, which is the local network here in the Boston area of both amateur and professional theater. And I did, and every week they would come out with a listing of, local play festivals, not big ones, not New York, that you could submit your stuff to. And so I wrote a play. I submitted it to a festival in the town of Maynard, Massachusetts, which is very small. The festival was held in the basement of a school. I've been in worse venues since then. I once had a play performed in a pizza parlor after it closed at night.
Did you get free pizza?
So this. I think I had a sub.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, they and this is a sort of you have very dedicated people who are not making any money at this, and doing it all basically to keep local folks entertained, so they don't have to sit in front of their TVs all night, every night. And I found the experience very fun, especially talking to actors and actresses and a director, sort of working through a play. I mean, it's just more satisfactory than sitting, as I say, in front of your TV set night after night. And so I was sort of off to the races, and I wrote a play for children, for teenage audiences, which I submitted to a publisher, and they published it. And then I did a second play for teenage audiences, both based on my high school experiences. And it is much easier to get published, to get a play published. And the reason is, when you get if you actually got a commercial publisher to publish your book, they'd have a budget for a certain number of copies, say, a first run of 5,000, 10,000. So that's a big financial commitment, and that's the reason why it's, so hard to get a novel or a book of short stories published. A dramatic publisher, on the other hand, doesn't publish anything. I mean, they publish paper copies, which can be very attractive, but they're only for people who want to buy the performance rights. So whenever I go, I've now had 10 plays published, and I always buy, 10, 20 copies for myself, but those are the only copies that are sold. And then the publisher puts out a catalog, which goes out to community theater groups all over the country, or they list their catalog on the internet, and people will write in, they'll get a copy to see if they're interested in the play, and if they perform the play, then, you actually get a check in the mail from the Cucamonga High School California Drama Society for $20.54. And it's usually this time of the year where the checks start coming in, and I take them in and show them to my wife. I actually got a check last week for 53 cents because that was my royalty on one copy of one play that was sold by one group that was thinking of putting it on. On the other hand, I got a check, for $60 for a high school group that had put on my play for 5 nights. You get charged by the night, and you get charged by the audience. So it's, you can hold your head up and say, well, I'm a real writer now. I get checks in the mail. They may not be more than $50, but they're checks.
Right. Well, this is fascinating. I'm totally a newbie to this particular area of publishing and writing. And so is there the hope that at some point one of these plays that you've written and that have been produced will perhaps be seen by somebody who operates a bigger venue, such as a larger theater, and you might get a larger production of your play?
Well, that's the hope, and I do think the next stage for the picket line would be, if it meets with any success at this festival, then I would work with the woman I'm currently working with in New York to do what's called a producer's showcase, where we put on basically a private viewing of the play, and potential investors, producers are invited to attend, and if they like it, then they basically buy performance rights. You keep the copyright, but they buy the right to exploit it. Now, I found out after I'd been writing plays for publication, and I finally tracked down a literary agent in New York who specialized in plays. He says, you're going about it wrong. You shouldn't publish these plays with little publishers if you want them to appear on Broadway. And I said, well, I don't have much hope of that, but what am I doing wrong? And he said, once you get a play published, then anybody can write into the theatrical company, and then they have the right to perform it. So a Broadway producer or some a California producer is not going to put money to do a performance of a play if somebody else has the right to do the same thing across the street. So I try to pick and choose which ones I send in to publishers and which ones I keep out of publication. The picket line, I've decided I'm going to go for it and keep it out of publication and see if I can get somebody. I mean, I think it's a very hot topic right now: labor versus management, rich versus poor. As I say, the line isn't as clearly drawn as you see it in the newspapers. But I think this one may have some legs because it's coming on board, at a time when this is